What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben and welcome back to The Bench for a brand new episode here on Sci-Fi Wednesdays. We are on the bench doing something a little bit different here. This is actually not a build video. This is a recap video on a project that I actually built and finished a little bit ago. I was actually tasked with making a wearable headpiece so that my girlfriend could dress up as Dok-Ondar. Dok-Ondar is a character that has a den of antiquities on Batuu, which is basically Star Wars land, here in California and also in Florida. And to be honest, it came out a lot better than I had anticipated. Now, of course, I don't have any footage whatsoever because I didn't intend on making a video like this, but I do have pictures that I took to send to my girlfriend to show her the progress, and so that's what we're going to be using. And majority of those are going to be in vertical format, so sorry about that in advance. Just to get started, this guy is actually extremely light. I've made it out of a couple different types of materials based around a baseball cap style hard hat. It's got some interesting kind of quirks and features to it, but to be honest, it's my first time ever trying something like this, so I didn't intend on making a video. But it actually came out way better than I thought it was going to, so we decided, let's do it. Dok is actually based on some foam core for a skeletal frame and is glued on top of a baseball cap style hard hat. So it's not really anything I've ever worked with before in this particular way. Everything was pieced together, and then the void in between all the different foam core pieces was filled with a very thin foam. Just went ahead and glued that all together. You can see here I only had a couple of images and then a Black Series figure to work off of, so it's not exactly the same as any of them, but it's similar enough to get by. Then I went ahead and filled the back portion of it also with styrofoam, shaving it down, fitting it into place. Then I installed and contoured foam around the top of the head. The whole idea here was to kind of get that contour that abruptly curves in towards the bottom of the neck and then scooping back out to the actual helmet. Now to cover everything, I used foam clay, and I've never really used foam clay before, but it actually was really easy to use. I could smooth it out with water, it dried in about 24 hours, and then I could just simply sand it down and it worked great. Plus it's lightweight, and since this was made to fit on my girlfriend's head and to be worn for long periods of time, I didn't want it too heavy on her neck. As you can see here, I did have to go ahead and make a couple contours, so I ended up using some EVA foam. Now I have 1mm sheets and 10mm sheets. I went with a 10mm circle, and then using my heat gun and a rounded surface, I went ahead and molded it to basically look like a little bit of a cap. Then I covered everything with a nice layer of 1mm EVA foam. That was basically to allow me to apply additional layers of foam clay. Then I glued on that little cap on the very back of the hat, and I was able to cover everything in foam clay. You can kind of see a side profile picture here of Dok. Honestly, I was pretty surprised that I was able to kind of piece this together, so yeah, not too shabby. Now for the initial side kind of gill area, I ended up finding a roll of this foam that was going to be used to kind of contour everything together, and then I just installed it and then slathered everything down with a nice layer of foam clay. Again, this stuff is awesome. It really worked well. Now for his eyes, I ended up using ping pong balls. I figured, again, lightweight, I don't want to put too much pressure or weight either on the front or the back of the helmet. I wanted it nicely balanced, and I figured ping pong balls would be just fine. I went ahead and I embedded those in some foam clay and then tapered those around the side of his head, and then slowly added little details like eyelids, some creases, some ridges, some wrinkles to give him a little bit of extra character. And then after it was fully dry, about 24 hours, I cut out some nice kind of contour pieces with 1mm EVA foam and glued those to the front and the top of Dok's head. And then after that was dry, I slathered everything down with a nice coat of Mod Podge. That was going to basically seal everything together so I could come back, paint, prime, and weather and not have to worry about it affecting the foam clay. Foam clay actually dries basically like EVA foam. And you can sand it, you can use a Dremel on it, you can contour, you can shape it. You can do a lot of stuff with foam clay. You can also see that I cut little strips of 1mm foam to go ahead and act as gills. Again, trying to give it a little bit more accuracy to the image, but also kind of throwing my own spin on it. Now, once all the Mod Podge had dried, I came back in and I started making some contours and adding in some wrinkles and a little bit of wear and tear on Dok's face. Because if you look at the actual animatronic, he's pretty grizzled. He's seen a lot of years. Now for primer, I ended up using a rattle can of Krylon Automobile Filler Primer. Absolutely awesome stuff. I actually used the rest of my can up, so I had to go out and buy another one. But I went ahead and applied several coats over the entire piece to make sure that everything was nicely covered. I figured this was a good base to work from. And I've used it before, so I wasn't worried about it doing any damage. Now once the primer was all nice and dry, I took it back into the garage and I started adding some pre-shade. I used Tamiya Natal Black, added in some spots, some shadows, some shading here and there, trying to get a bit of contrast, some cool shades and tones. And then I was able to add in a little bit more contour and really highlight some of the interesting effects I had reached for his skin. Underneath the eyes, underneath the back of the neck, giving it a bit more shadow. And then I also drew in a couple of lines around the front of the face, basically pre-shading, like on any model kit. Now for the overall colors for Doc, I came in and started with a nice, almost like a pre-shade of red-brown. As you can see here, I added in a little bit of a darker line here and there, contrasting it ever so slightly. And then I came in with my base coat of Flat Earth, also by Tamiya. Covered over everything I needed to cover, also trying to keep it a little bit on the thinner side so I wouldn't obscure some of my surface detail. It wasn't perfect, mind you, but it worked okay. So after all that was painted and dried, I let it cure up, and then I came back and I started picking out some details, like I painted the eyes a plain flat black, and I started coming in with a little bit of highlighting here again and adding in some nice washes. I overcoated everything with an oil wash. I also used some AK panel liners, and I just kind of played around with the idea of getting it to be that kind of darker brown color. Of course, I went a little bit too dark, so I had to come back in a little bit later and overcoat some of the areas with a lightened buff, just to try to pop some of those panels. Honestly, it was a fun project, and I think it turned out decently. It turned out way better than I thought it was going to. After a couple more coats of some oil paints, mixed up not only with just basic oil paint, but also again with some more AK panel liners and different washes, I was actually very happy with how it was looking. I wanted to make sure that I kept some of that wash in the deep recesses and in the grooves and the valleys of his skin. And then after that, it was pretty much done. Everything sealed and cured. My girlfriend took it out to Star Wars night at Disneyland, wore it, absolutely loved it, had a lot of compliments for it, and so she wanted to go ahead and make a couple of alterations. One of which is adding a chin strap. Not that this is a very heavy piece, mind you, but if you're moving your head around a lot, it does kind of shift a bit. So with a chin strap, our hope is that it's going to go ahead and stay in place a little bit more efficiently. Not only did I add that chin strap, but her costume does have a white hood that goes up over the back of the head. So I went ahead and added in a couple of magnets on the inside of the hat so that I could actually take her hood and add in a tiny strip magnet on the inside of each of the seams. Basically so it would stay put whenever she moved or if the wind picked up or anything like that, so her hood would stay exactly in place. And as you can see from this real quick little video, it stays pretty decently, and I don't see her ever moving her head this much. But that is it, guys. Dok-Ondar was an amazing adventure. I'm really glad that I went ahead and took a shot at it and built it up. Initially, I thought, no way am I going to get this thing done, but I actually achieved what I set out to do, which is make something that may not be 100% accurate to the figure or to the animatronic, but people knew who it was pretty quick when she was walking around Disneyland. So this is actually going to make another appearance this upcoming weekend at Comic-Con down in San Diego, California. So if you happen to see a Dok-Ondar walking around, you know who made it. But anyway, until our next episode, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on this very special episode of Sci-Fi Wednesdays One and Done. We're going to go ahead and head off to Comic-Con, but we'll be back next week with, I'm hoping, a brand new build, and we can get started on some more fun projects. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you soon.